Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Girl You Know It. So we're so excited for you to join us for this fourth episode of our fifth season. And for those of you who are just turning in right now for your first time, Girl You Know It is an offshoot podcast of Black Women Connect Vancouver.
Black Women Connect Vancouver is a collective of women and femmes who come together to inspire, empower, leverage our strengths, and embrace our diverse experiences. It's a community where folks in Vancouver can build meaningful relationships and celebrate the beauty of Black womanhood. Girl, You Know It is our way of creating connections in another powerful way to talk about our shared experiences and as Black women in serious, fun, and everything in between. I am one of your hosts. My name is Abby. I am the project coordinator for Black Women Connect Vancouver, and I will let our other regular co-host introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Nataisi Mukwabi, and I am the founder of Black Women Connect Vancouver. So we're so excited for you to join us on this episode with our special guest, Jennifer.
Woo-hoo!
She is a registered physiotherapist who specializes in pelvic floor health. So we're really excited to dive into this topic because I feel like we don't know this topic at all.
So
and a lot of us don't take care of our pelvic health. So let's have more of this discussion. So tell us who you are.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be on this platform to talk about the work I do. So a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Montreal. I moved to Vancouver about 3 years ago, and now I run my own practice, and it's been so far so good.
Yes. Awesome.
Yes.
So tell us, how did you get into the work that you do?
Yeah. So I actually have a bachelor's in biopharmaceuticals.
Oh, okay.
So I really started in another field, like doing all the chemistry and biochem kind of studies. And then I worked in a hospital for a while in cancer research. And it felt very lonely kind of work because you're on a computer and it's a lot of data and analysis. And I decided to go back into physiotherapy.
Okay.
So I went back to school to McGill to do my master's degree. And how I came about pelvic floor is our last year we had electives that we could choose, and pelvic floor was an option.
Okay.
And pediatric was my second option.
Right.
And I took the pelvic floor class, and I just loved it so much.
Yeah.
We actually tested on each other.
Okay.
Yeah, so
You got to know your people
Yeah,
very well.
my classmates, I knew very well. So we were all ladies, and we got to practice on each other.
Right.
And it was a very small group. I think we were maybe 12 to 15. And we really got to understand the body more. And our teachers were so experienced as well. And taking this class was the equivalent of being able to take your level 1 of pelvic floor, meaning that once I graduated, I could already start working.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh, well, might as well, because I felt like this is my calling. And I'm like, I want to be able to work right away in the field. So so I graduated, and I found a clinic in Montreal that worked in, specializes in women's health and pelvic health. Yeah. And I started working there, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. And here we are today.
Here we are today.
I love it. I love it.
And it's fun because when I graduated, pelvic floor was not so much of a topic.
Yes.
And so even my classmates, I remember they were not questioning me, but being like, are you sure you just want Are you sure you just want to start right away in a pelvic floor clinic? Like, don't you want to do, I don't know, orthopedics first? And I was like, no, I think, I'll just do it. And now the topic has just boomed, especially recently. So it's really nice to see more activity or more on social media. Maybe it's my algorithm as well, but there's way more conversations to be had about that.
That's exciting. So tell us about your clinic.
Yes, so we are in Vancouver. So we're in downtown Vancouver, close to Yaletown. And we have acupuncture. I do pelvic floor rehab. We also have an RMT and a counselor. And yeah, so it's a nice little space. And we want people to feel comfortable.
Right.
That's our main goal. So when you walk in, it's not very clinic looking. It almost looks like someone's house.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so a lot of plants.
And it's very comforting.
Very welcoming.
Yes, very
What's
welcoming.
the name of your
Acu
clinic?
Elements.
Acu Elements.
And where can people find it?
Online, you can just Google www.acuelements.com.
Okay,
And
cool.
find us. Yeah.
Well, tell us. Okay, so like you said, pelvic health is not really talked about, and also in our community, I don't think we really talk about our bodies at all, especially our womanhood, and so that's why we're having podcasts like this.
Yes.
But why is it important for Black women to talk about and know about their pelvic health or pelvic floor or all of the above?
Yeah. It's because, first of all, we don't have a lot of access to education on the topic. I think there's a big stigma about, pelvic pain or just our private parts. And I think there's this kind of inherited knowledge of ignoring some of our symptoms.
Right.
Yeah.
And, sometimes the medical system hasn't been the kindest to us as well. So it's also the awareness and talking about these topics that will give people power to seek help and to know more about their body. And pelvic floor is connected to so many things that people don't know about. The muscles connect to your bladder, to your rectum, to your uterus. So if you have issues in any of those components, there is a pelvic floor aspect to it. And the way I like to say it, how you go to the dentist like once or twice a year.
Yeah.
If you don't have any pelvic floor dysfunction, I feel like every woman and every Black woman especially should go to a pelvic floor physio once or twice a year. Just even if it's just to see what's happening, because also women's span is, we go through a lot of changes, whether it's the fertility years versus postpartum versus perimenopause, so the woman's body does change throughout the year, and with that our muscle mass changes as well, and the pelvic floor is a set of muscles that will also change over time.
Okay, so we've talked about pelvic floor, but for those who are unfamiliar, you brought some props.
Yes, of course.
I love a good prop.
Yes,
I love a good prop. So please educate us on what we're talking about.
Yes. So I don't know, are people also just listening?
No, both.
Yes, both. Okay, so I'll be
trying to be descriptive.
This is my moment.
Yes, I love it.
So this is the pelvic floor model. So basically the pelvic floor is at the bottom of your core. So you can think about your pelvis like a bowl, and the bottom line of the bowl being the muscles of your pelvic floor. So they attach from your pubic bone at the front to your tailbone at the back, and it lines the whole pelvis. So if you want to just take a look at it, and see it. Oh, sorry.
It's like in there.
Yes.
So your spinal cord, your tailbone right at wherever your tailbone ends.
It all connects to your pelvic floor. A lot of things that I get when I show the model to people is that they're always surprised with how many muscles are in there.
Yeah.
How many muscles are there?
13 muscles. They come in pairs. So there's a lot of little muscles that work together to keep your organs in place, but also when you pee, when you go for a poo, and also when you're having intercourse, it's all part of the pelvic floor function, and it also serves as a stabilizer for your pelvis.
Okay.
So people that have issues, maybe low back pain, tailbone pain, during pregnancy, it could be pubic pain. All this can have like a pelvic floor component to it that you can address. So that's the big takeaway, is that there's a lot of muscles in there.
Yeah.
There's more muscles than you think, and there's a lot that can be done as well to heal these muscles.
Interesting.
So what are maybe some common myths or
Yeah.
misunderstandings that people don't or when you have clients come in or
Yeah. A lot of times they think Kegel is the answer for everything.
That's what
It's so funny because
hold your feet.
Exactly. It's so funny because my landlord I bumped into, and she had no idea I worked in this space.
Yeah.
And the first thing she told me was like, "Oh, I do my Kegels all the time."
I'm on top of it.
But so a lot of times people think, the answer to everything is Kegels.
Right.
But sometimes people are actually needing more relaxation versus strengthening of their pelvic floor. And also for some issues, like especially pelvic pain, sometimes people don't think that there's like a solution that can be related to their pelvic floor. They often, which is also a big important part of it, go see their medical doctor. And then sometimes medical doctors don't know to refer back to us to assist, because it is a component to your health. And and it's like rehab of any other muscle. If you've had, a knee injury or a back injury or shoulder injury, you will go and get that taken care of, and you will go through rehab steps. And it's the same with the pelvic floor muscles, but only because they're very internal, it feels almost like this kind of like zone of like, what am I doing here? But it follows the same principle.
Okay.
So if you have an injury there, we need to look at the strength. We need to look at also the flexibility.
Right.
It's like any other muscle. Another one is, vulva versus vagina. So,
I just feel like people don't know the difference.
People don't.
So surprising.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's because it's not talked about.
It's
like
not
in a
talked
lot of our, whether it's like different Black communities, like that stigma, that shame of like, we're not really talking about what's down there, but we should know as women.
Where is everything?
What is that?
Exactly. So the vulva will be like the female external genitalia, and the vagina will be the internal, like part of the canal. So that will be the vagina. And I have a lot of people, and there's never any shame in any questions when people come to me, because I understand that this is something we don't talk about.
Right.
And sometimes it's like we take the mirror and we look together, and then it's like, okay, like this is where this is.
Yeah.
This is where your labias are. This is your smaller labias.
Okay.
And because sometimes it's important for people to know where things are, because oftentimes people don't come see us until there's like a problem in the area.
Not preventative,
Exactly. So, and already a lot of my work is bringing awareness to the body.
Yes.
So a lot of times we're very disconnected to what's happening inside of bodies, and especially these muscles are very deep. So a lot of times, sometimes it can be very emotional, sometimes it can be very empowering, but to get to connect people with that part starts with the education, and starts with things like this podcast and talking about this topic, because maybe it's gonna spark a question, a conversation with someone. And also another sorry, I know I can ramble.
No, keep talking. Tell us.
Is in BC, I cannot talk for other provinces, but I'm in Quebec as well. You don't necessarily need a referral from a doctor to come see us.
Yes.
Another misconception is that you need a referral, unless your plan, like your health benefit plan, requires you to have a referral before going to see a physio. And then this section of physiotherapy counts as physiotherapy.
That's really good to know.
Yeah,
that's really good to know. Okay, so for people who are like wanting to come, what does a typical exam kind of look like? Right?
Yeah. Okay. So like a typical initial session.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So there's usually an intake form, asking you a bunch of questions about your health, about your pelvic health. So bladder questions, bowel, sexual health, and just if there's any pregnancies, any surgeries, things like that. Then you would come in, and if there's like a open space to ask questions before we start testing. Usually I look at the whole posture of a person, because you can think your pelvis is almost at the middle of your body. So from above and from below will have an impact on your pelvic floor. Right. So I'm already just looking at how you're standing.
No, I'm like,
yeah, you're like, oh, let me
sit up straight.
I'm sitting like this, so it's all good. I'm not judging. But even when someone walks in, I'm already looking at how their body is. And then what we'll do is that we'll check also your breathing, because there's a pelvic floor, but it's part of what we call your inner core muscles. So that includes your diaphragm, your transverse, which is a layer of core muscle. So I'm testing these areas, as well as your hip mobility. Right. So I'll look at your hip mobility, your hip strength, and depending what the person is coming in for, and also the goal of the person, I will kind of tailor my session according to that. But in general, the physio should look at the whole body and not just the pelvic floor before going in and looking at the pelvic floor. So for that part, it can be done. It's always optional, and consent is super big. Right. So especially, here. So you want to make sure that the person understands what we're going to do. Yeah. It's not like a PAP. Yeah. Because that's another again, misconception is that I'm going to put a tool or I'm going to go very deep. It's not like that. So if the person is comfortable enough to do the internal assessment, then I have gloves, I have gel. I kind of say step by step what I'm doing, because you always want to have a trauma-informed approach. And then I will test the muscles. So I will check, like any other muscle, the flexibility of the muscle. I will probably make the person do a few contractions to see what is the connection looking like, the coordination, the endurance, the strength, and the tone to check if the muscle is very tense or if the muscle is too loose, and as well as if there's any prolapse. So that's when there's any organ descent. I will take a look and see if there's any descent. And also, most of the times I do the initial and I test, like, the person is lying down. Right. But there is the case where if someone has an organ descent and let's say they really are active and a lot of their work is standing, I will do a standing assessment as well. Right. And so then I will be sitting on the floor usually. The person will have their rope wrapped and I will go palpate the muscles for me to feel if with pressure there's a lot more like what happens to the muscle basically when you're standing. So more of a dynamic test. Okay. So it's very catered to
what the person needs and the options and what they're comfortable with as well.
Exactly. So everything is optional. I never force anyone to do an internal. Yes. But some cases, an internal, I always give the recommendation. If you have a, let's say, organ descent, or if you have a lot of pelvic pain, sometimes an internal is necessary. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be the first time. Yeah. It can be the second visit. Like they
can get to know you.
Exactly. They can get to know you a little better. And there's a lot to do outside of the pelvis as well. So it doesn't have to be the first way to go. But yes.
Okay. So what kind of symptoms or conditions do you feel that people kind of ignore that really, they should be going to see a pelvic floor specialist?
When they start peeing more often. So that's the first kind of sign, right? Is that they've increased their frequency of how often they pee and they cannot hold as much before they get to the washroom. So that's a big one. If they're bloated, like chronically bloated, that's another one that could affect your pelvic floor long term. Right. Because bloating could cause extra pressure from above on the pelvic floor. And if it happens every now and then, sure, right? We all have that burrito that, we digest so and so.
Or dairy for some people.
Or dairy, But when it's chronic, that chronic pressure over time can cause some pelvic floor symptoms. If they have issues going to the bathroom, if they end up straining when they have a bowel, that's another one. If they have a lot of fear around intercourse, that's a big one to start thinking of coming to see us, because there's a lot of strategies and to do around that as well. So anything basically related to like bladder, bowels, core, even if you have a back pain and hip pain, you know, there's a pelvic floor component. I have people that see, let's say, the general physio, and they get to a certain point,
They're
and
like,
then
something's not working.
Exactly. And sometimes it's the muscle internally that is still a bit stuck that you have to work on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So how do these issues kind of show up? We talked about like during pre-menopause or pregnancy, or even for people who are trying to get pregnant. Like what issues could show up, or like what should we do, or I don't know.
Okay, so
more about that.
no, that's a good question. I'm just thinking of all the different
I
people
know that's like there's a lot of different stages.
A lot of stages.
Okay, how about for people who are trying to get pregnant or thinking about getting pregnant?
Yes. So if, let's say, someone is thinking about getting pregnant and they already have a pelvic floor dysfunction, I would say address it before, or try to address it before, because with the pressure of a baby, things might worsen a little bit. I would say also check for a core, you know, make sure that the core is nice and healthy, make sure mobility in the hip is there. So kind of prep your body for the change of a pregnancy, because the pregnancy will create more pressure on the pelvis, but also if you had an injury from before, some people it makes it better because they needed the laxity, but some people will make it more tense, so it will kind of worsen. So I would say if you can work on core, hip strength, and hip mobility, that would be the area I would start working on. So that's for like pre or fertility or thinking of getting pregnant.
Right.
Yeah. Just to make sure you have a good baseline that will ready you for the change, because then when you're pregnant, things start stretching. So your core starts stretching, and you can think if your core is working for you for, I'm going to say a number, but like 40% of your movement, and then it's actually weakening, then all that extra strength that is not coming from the core anymore has to come from somewhere. So it's either that it's going to go all on your pelvic floor, depending again of your posture, or it might go in your back. So some people will start having back pain or hip pain. So things start changing.
Okay.
And you want to think of like labor as almost like a marathon event.
It is.
Okay, yes, mother. Oh my goodness.
Mother of all mothers.
Yes, please. Oh gosh.
So you want to prep your body a little bit with that mindset.
Yeah.
Of like, even if things are changing, your body, you don't want your body to get, in quotes, lazy, in the sense that you want the muscles, even if they're super stretched out or super tired from holding the weight, you want them to be still keeping their range. So, because that will help with the recovery postpartum.
Okay.
So that's why, and now even more research is coming out saying that if you're pregnant, you need to move.
Yeah.
Obviously within, you know, if you don't have a condition, obviously with, you know, medical clearance. But now that's even more a thing of like, you need to be strong and you need to keep that that body active through the pregnancy, because it has better outcomes for postpartum.
Okay.
And that's also something I feel that in the Black community, you know, it's a bit like, oh, you're pregnant, don't move, you know,
just
or
relax.
like just relax, or, you know. And
but then
I was like, hold up.
there's like those like African moms out there working in the farms with the baby on the back and pregnant. So I don't know, like their core strength must be
next level.
Exactly. So it's things to consider for definitely pregnancy, postpartum. Again, depending of what your goal is or what your worry is. I have a lot of people that is the laboring when it's the first time. They don't want to tear, you know, they're scared of just like how it's gonna go, and they would just want to really put their body in the best
prepare.
Yes. And I find that also in the Black community, we tend to have more of that curve in the back. So also that impacts pressure on your pelvic floor. So
the arch?
Yeah, the arch. I know. I love an arch too. I love a little arch moment. I love it too. But sometimes for our pelvic floor, we need to then think even more of strengthening the core and the pelvic floor and the hips, because you want to make sure you give yourself a lot of support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. How about on the other side?
Oh,
like
yes, yes.
menopause.
Yes.
Like let's jump to.
Let's talk to
yes.
perimenopause.
Oh, perimenopause.
Apparently,
Okay.
Yes.
Black women are more susceptible to getting perimenopause before, like
Oh.
any other, ethnicity.
Yeah.
Wow.
And also, for continuing that thought, hysterectomies and fibroids as well is another. Anyways, but yes, to go back to perimenopause, strengthening, because you're losing muscle mass yearly because of the change of hormones. So it's almost like you want to try to kind of beat the wave and try to make sure you keep up with that, and at the same time flexibility,
right?
Because of I know I lost my word, but the descent of estrogen. I know there's a better word in English to say descent, decrease. There you go.
That works.
I was like descent. But decrease in estrogen, that affects the flexibility of the muscle. So people then tend to be tight. Right. And I have a lot of perimenopausal women that come in and like, I had never any problems my whole life.
Right.
And all of a sudden I have like pain with sex, I have problems with my pee, and I talk about strengthening, but also lengthening is just as important as well. So it's always like finding that sweet spot depending of where the person is starting of, is this person too tight and weak, or is this person just weak in general, or is just this person tight and they're already doing a lot for their strength and they just need to have more balance with the lengthening. Because like any muscle in terms of strength, you want to think of almost like a bicep curl. Like you will want to lengthen first your arm to then pump. Same with the pelvic floor, you want to be able to lengthen to then contract. And your pelvic floor is also a dynamic muscle that moves with your body. So if sometimes it's stuck because it's tight, it won't move with your body, and then it will give you more symptoms. So sometimes you need to think about more of the lengthening of the muscle. And that's something that we assess as well. And according to their symptoms, if they come with more pain, constipation, urgency, frequency with bladder, I'm already thinking this is probably someone who's maybe on the tighter side, versus if they can't hold their pee and they cough and they feel heaviness and pressure, then I'm thinking, oh, maybe that's someone that's a bit more laxed, or just gave birth. The muscles are already a bit more open.
Right.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
So how can we be a better advocate, like moving for ourselves in these types of medical spaces? You were telling us how you don't need a doctor referral, which is really great information to know, but like for some people maybe they do need that.
Exactly. Yeah.
What would you say like we could do?
So if you have symptoms and if you go see your medical doctor, ask them if that's an option for you as a compliment on the side. And don't be shy to tell them, even if you feel like it's TMI.
Right.
Because a lot of people, when they come to that, I know it's TMI, but it's not. It really gives us better understanding. And then your medical doctor might be like, you should do this. And ask them about, oh, I've heard about pelvic floor physio. Do you think this is something that could help me as we are investigating XYZ? Because we're not medical doctors, but we can definitely help with someone's quality of life and symptoms that they're struggling with, and sometimes even completely treat the thing, depending of what it is, obviously. And so I would say don't be shy to ask questions, and don't be shy to ask if this is a right option for you. And also find medical or health practitioners or pelvic floor physio that you connect with, because it is an intimate practice. You want to make sure you feel safe with the person and that they understand you, and don't think you just have one option and that you have to stick it out. Most people offer like a complimentary call, something, and you can ask the question, take the time to find the right fit for you. And if you have one bad experience, it's not going to mean that, all the experience will be bad, because there are people out there that are qualified and they will be able to help you. I feel like it's almost like counseling.
Yeah.
Because in Quebec it's different, but I feel like here there's a lot more small practices.
Yes, yeah.
So people do more their research in terms of finding the right person, the right fit
I noticed
for
that too.
you. Yeah.
So that social emotional connection.
Yes.
In that sense.
What simple things can people do to continue kind of taking care of themselves, maybe just at home right now, before they find someone?
Yeah. Again, I don't want to be like redundant with it, but depending on what they have. But let's say like hip stretches, hip mobility, hip strengthening, depending of what it is. I'm trying to be general.
Yes.
But example, don't push when you pee.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, don't strain when you're having a bowel, and if it's not passing, just stop and just go another time.
Yeah.
Stay hydrated. Sometimes when people have some issues, they avoid drinking water. But if you're used to drinking a certain level, gradually increase so that you can get your 2 liters of water, because that's important for the health of your muscles as well. Because if you tend to be drier, then the muscle have to, tend to tense a little bit more. Just, take care of your body if you have a pain, even if it's not pelvic floor and it's around the pelvis or a little bit above or below, even a foot can change how the forces go into your pelvic floor.
Wow.
So if you've had like a toe injury, that could come up and affect your pelvic floor as well. So
everything's connected.
Everything's connected.
Hey,
everything's
crazy.
connected. So just make sure you take care of yourself.
Okay.
And advocate for yourself for sure.
That's so awesome.
I hope that was good.
No,
enough.
that's great.
That's a great answer.
Because I don't want to say something. Imagine someone just do Kegels. Because I've had that patient before, but it was a male patient, which is another. Anyways,
I was going to ask that too, though. I want to know.
Yes.
Do males come to see pelvic floor?
Yeah. Because a lot of people, well, not a lot, but some people think that men don't have pelvic floors, but they do.
Okay.
And when they come in, and I've had that case with the person I've heard that, I just need to do Kegels.
Yeah.
And then he just overdid his Kegels and then ended up with pain with ejaculation.
Oh.
Yeah. So yes. Yeah.
Ouch. Oh my goodness.
So
It's funny. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Things you learn.
Yeah. The things you learn. Oh, definitely.
And in Montreal more than here, because in Montreal, I think it's more, or maybe the clinic I was working at, I would get a lot of prostatectomy. And so they removed the prostate because they had like cancer or cancer cells. And so then that affects their whole pelvic floor. And they end up having to do a lot of pelvic floor, rehab after that. Okay. So that's another big one.
It's not just for women,
exactly,
but it's for all of us.
We're focusing.
I love it.
Yes.
So if you could tell Black women one thing about her pelvic floor, what would you say?
I'm gonna learn more about it, connect to it, look at it in the mirror. Don't be shy to look at it in the mirror.
It's your body.
It's your body. You need to know. And already just you knowing will give you a sense of power in that, because you will know what's how does it look like. And sometimes it's kind of this avoidance of like, I'm not gonna look at it and I'm just gonna pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
But honestly, be brave enough to look at it. And if you don't know how to look at it, just go see a pelvic floor physio and ask. Like, it's your body, and at the end of the day, and I think there's more of that in the world right now. It's like holistic care, taking care of yourself, and I think we're coming around to that more of like, we are our best advocates, but we need to understand not each other, but understand our body more to be able to advocate for ourselves better.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you. That was so.
Yeah, I know. I'm ready. Like, my leg is stretched.
Let's talk more. If we had more time, that would be so great, and hopefully we can have you come back. But just remind everybody about your clinic. What's its name?
Yes.
Where can they find you?
So it's AcuElements Wellness. They can find us at www.acuelements.com. And I offer complimentary calls. So if they're not sure and they just want to talk to me, me. It's free. You can just book a call and we can see if it's a good fit for you.
Can they find you on social media?
Yes, at Jennifer JL Physio.
Okay.
I'm not the most active though, I have to say. This is like, you guys took me out of like today we did content, we did photos. I was just like, oh my God.
The world of social media.
But you know what? I told myself always like once a year, because I feel like there's not a lot of Black like healthcare providers. And I feel like it's part of my duty to like just put myself out there at least once.
Well, you're
a
gonna
year.
get out there now, girl.
At least once a year, just to say like, it's okay, we exist. We're here, we're working hard, and we
thank you for that.
We want more of you. Like, I want to see more. Yeah.
So if people have questions also about your profession, is it okay for them to call you?
Yeah, they can DM me.
Okay, yeah. Awesome. Fine. We love it.
I love it so much. Okay, well, thank you everyone for listening to our podcast on this episode about pelvic floor with Jennifer. And as she already said, you can connect with her on social media, learn more about her work. And of course, you can find us on all podcast streaming platforms. You can watch our video recording on YouTube. And the Black channel, wow. What's
the Black channel? That Black channel.
I mean, it is a Black channel. But the YouTube channel is Black Women Connect Vancouver. But we'll talk to you later. See you until next time.
Bye. Thanks for listening. The Black Channel.
Thank you for listening to our podcast episode. You can find us in all streaming platforms, and you can watch our video recording up on YouTube channel, Black Women Connect Vancouver. Until next time.